Unfortunately, I don't think that Plan B addresses the needs of the community at large. This is the reason that it was rejected in the first place. And Plan B will perpetuate the unfortunate divisions that has arisen in the community. And I think that Plan B will change the dynamic of the village of Byram and will not be reversed in the foreseeable future.
Great, thank you. Did you? I continue to have concerns about the balance. And when you look at this in terms of the campus with the library, the green, where this school sits, and the undeveloped woods, ravine, whatever you call it. I understand that, this is workable, no doubt. But in the end, and I went again yesterday, and I sat there, saw Corey down there, and Mr. DeBrookie, we were sitting there talking afterwards. It changes the character of the neighborhood, in my mind. You're moving a 50-some-odd thousand square foot facility closer on William, which is closer to Delvin. I cannot sit up here in good conscience, not recall the meetings. We had, I think, one, maybe two, where we went on site and tried to address some of the traffic issues related to signalization and turning lanes. For me, I feel like it's bringing the activity closer to that and exacerbating the problem that we have. So in terms of the concept being sound from a construction and feasibility, there's no question it is. But in terms of applying it into the community, the village of Byram, we have several studies that were done there about it. I just, in my good conscience, can't put up my stamp of approval on it, knowing what I know about the broader context of the community. That is why I'm continually focused on taking what one of the members, in fact, of the building committee, when we were interviewing them, said, when you look at that site, you have to appreciate that those folks who picked the location for the original school picked the best location. And I came away from that particular discussion saying, here's someone who's had experience building schools and lives in the neighborhood, and they're right. It just makes sense. So until I have exhausted the process whereby one can look at achieving the objectives that are set forth in the ed specs and within the school community and within the greater Byram community and Greenwich community, I'm not prepared to support B today. I would like to see that exhausted and look at that in totality. And I know there's a lot of folks who spend a lot of time and we're getting a lot of feedback, both sides. I think, it was, John mentioned it, again, it's always important to take a step back. I've been unhappy with some of the assertions made by pretty much folks on both sides. It's raised a very unfortunate tone and tenor in our community. So this isn't directed to you, it's just more broadly. That doesn't serve anybody well. Questioning, people's residents, questioning who the school serves, questioning our motives and so forth. I think when things degenerate to that level, everybody loses. Because at the end of the day, no one's sitting here for a non-valid reason. Everyone wants a particular outcome. The question is, what is that best outcome? For me, I'm not prepared to vote affirmatively today until I can see a sincere effort on the part of the Board of Ed to give D in a fair hearing, and work with you and others who perhaps have stepped forward to offer their guidance. I mean, there's a lot of talent in the community. I know within the Byram community, people have stepped forward. If they can address that, I would certainly feel more comfortable moving forward with something other than what I'm saying.
Yes, I have to agree with my two colleagues, and will say that I would like the Board of Education to bring to us, in my opinion, Site D, and I will comment on my reasons in terms of the possible changing landscape, the ball field. I have questions about whether or not from a cost point of view, from a land use point of view, if that's going to be the actuality of that, if whether or not we're going to, but I also have issues, obviously, with traffic and construction, but depending on who you ask, you're going to get people that say it can be done, and I'm not debating whether or not it could be done, but we have to this board has to make a judgment call. I will say, though, in terms of the tone of the emails, this board has received, I don't know, anywhere from 130 emails. That's not including the phone calls and the meetings we've had with architects, BOE members, administration, input from parents, input from the Byram Neighborhood Association. I say that because there has been some that say that the Board of Selectmen has not been involved in this process, and that is just emphatically not correct. This board has been completely and utterly involved, I mean, in this from the point of view. I will also comment, too, on the safety aspect, because there have been comments, too, about, in the emails, about the safety of whether one site is safer than the other. I will say that this board, every decision we make, that is probably the most important decision. And to sort of insinuate or think that we're going to somehow put children in an unsafer place is just flatly wrong. So I am not supporting B as well.
So the motion before the board is presently to consider the request for referral of B. It was moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed? Nope. That referral request has been denied. I would propose, as earlier comments reiterated, that we request the Board of Education, working with interested parties, to more fully evaluate Plan D, use of the existing site in the accompanying perimeter area to achieve the objectives that are set forth in the ed specifications, and bring that to us for consideration.
Thank you.
The next item on our agenda is appointments and nominations. Item number 3. Sure. About this or about?
After. Everyone's leaving.
Let's talk about it offline, because we're, okay. Yeah, they're going to be, yeah, ask them to stay, because this won't take long. This shouldn't.
We do have executive session, though.
Right, well, we could delay that.
Who are you?
If you could just let us know who you are.
My name is Peter Betchake. I live in Byram. I'm a parent.
Sure.
Sure. Do you have a mic?
I'm curious as... Is this on? Sorry to disrupt this.
Yeah, no worries, go ahead.
But I'm curious as to what the Board of Education did this past 18 months. They have looked at plans, they have heard meeting after meeting, and I know that Byram has been presented to you as a divided community, but I don't see it that way. We're a community that's fairly united in our desire to get the right thing for our neighborhood, for all of our residents. And I'm curious as to what the ed specs are that maintain that we need to just abandon B, even though the architects have told you that B is a pretty good spot. The Board of Ed has listened to meeting after meeting, as I said. Barbara O'Neill's summary the other night, after a 6-2 vote of your elected Board of Officials, your elected officials of the Board of Ed voted 75% to 25% to look at B. 2 community members of Byram, 2 citizens, a B and a D, have combined together to propose a Plan B modified version. Now, I'm wondering why we're going to completely forsake the efforts of the community, the efforts of the elected officials of the Board of Education, who have clearly voiced their opinion after many meetings, not just, look at these pretty pictures, I vote B. And you gentlemen are, in 45 minutes, and I understand, Mr. Marzullo, that I saw you at the meeting a couple weeks ago. I didn't see anybody on Tuesday, but that's irrelevant, I get it. But you're going to not just dismiss B, but you want to see D again. So again, I ask you, what was the last 18 months?
I'll give you,
Yeah,
let me just answer to you in terms of the question you asked. I articulated my reasoning in terms of familiarity, more than familiarity, as someone who's lived in this town my whole life, been over there, been at that school, been at that library, addressed traffic and safety issues at this board on the street, not just sitting up here, actually in Byram.
I get it.
I truly do not believe that is the best location to situate a new structure. Two, in all fairness to the Board of Ed, I say this, and it may come out the wrong way, I think they're solely looking at it from the context of what their mission is in terms of delivering the education and the potential disruption that will occur if, in fact, they go with D. We have to look at it from a much broader microscope in the town, which is saying we have a site which I believe is known. I mean, there's a building on it versus one that's unknown. And
I understand, but in 1950, I don't think that they were necessarily thinking about the same things that we think about now as far as
no
being
question, but
safe and evacuation and ingress and egress. I honestly don't.
But it can be done, as he said, it can be done. So let's.
He also said it would be better to do it down on the ground.
Did he say that?
He said it to me out in the hallway, because I was the only one that asked him what he thought was the best way to go. But, and I honestly, in all due respect, one thing I'd like to say is the divided community thing about Byram. Not divided. You're talking about every meeting people showed up, and everybody got to hear, got to be heard, and got to be represented. And all I think that they're asking for now is to be represented.
Well,
You know what I mean?
In terms of
Yes.
in terms of alternatives,
In the paper a couple
we only recently are aware that there's a call it modified B. I know Mr. Pecora, I spoke to him. That was not on our agenda today. Certainly, it's within the board's purview to bring whatever they'd like to bring forward. We've given them our direction. But I don't necessarily subscribe that they're not divided based upon the communications we've been receiving. And so we've been getting considerable amount of communications. I think you mentioned 130. I mean, we've gotten one from someone from the neighborhood association questioning whether they still had status or not. We have people who still believe that the village green should be preserved in the building where it is. So
Right, and I understand.
it still exists.
The other night I said this, and I've been living in Byram for 8 years, and I rent, and I have never heard until 10 days ago that being called a village green. It's a baseball field, a single little baseball field. It's, you know what I mean? You know what I mean? Anyway,
Baseball field or village green, it's almost, it's still what they perceive it. Yes, sir.
Could I ask a point of information?
We've actually moved it.
kind of quick.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
I'm a little, having been in planning and zoning and following it for 30, 40 years, having been on the RTM for 25 years and dealt with a lot of MIs, having had to look at the fine print of all of these operations, we in the town of Greenwich have devised a system to deal with this. What I don't understand is I look at the charter and our rules. The rules are very simple. The Board of Ed decides that we need a new school or a new part of a school. In order to do that, they go together and say, okay, what is this new school going to do? And they devise what's called the ed specs, which is what this physical building is supposed to produce in educational services. Once they've said this is what we need to have given to us or delivered to us, they ask the selectmen to form a building committee and start the process. MI is one of the parts of the process. Once the school board has made that request, they have nothing more directly to do or authority, as I understand it from the charter, except that they have the right to approve, not initiate, not pick, but approve the selection of an architect by the building committee, and they have the right to approve or disapprove the final plans that are developed by that building committee. That is their sole and complete involvement in it. And the reason for that separation is the kind of points I think that you, Mr. Selectman, brought up. The Board of Education's job is to supply good education. And that's wonderful. And that's their point of view, but it's a narrow point of view. The job of P&Z, the job of the Board of Selectmen, and that's why I believe it's devised this way, is to look at how these various town facilities fit and integrate within the whole town system. That's why we have a POCD, Byram, we spent years on a Byram plan, on looking at how the flow of traffic, all of those things. So am I correct in my understanding that the Board of Ed really has been put in a position far beyond their expertise or their requirements as far as picking sites? Thank you.
Again, I'm not going to debate the,
Yeah,
I
Peter,
mean, you went through the chart, yeah. The charter stipulates that we've been given guidance on it. I mean, everybody's trying to fill their subscribe role.
No, but
Yeah.
all I want
Yeah.
to know is I want an even playing field, excuse the
Yeah.
pun, where everybody's by the same rules. Am I correct that
Yeah.
that is the law?
Yeah, that's,
Thank you.
that's what we were told.
Peter, my only comment that I wanted to make, and it gets a little ugly in here, and it's not supposed to. If the Board of Ed could come back with a modified plan in relatively the B location where the community works together, and I live in Byram, I know the traffic issues, and keeps the traffic flow in the same location that it currently is, keeps the safety, adds more forestry and green than what currently exists, and can show you that the field that is being proposed is not only viable, but will be a better field, and allows the Byram Library to remain in the same configuration with their own parking and doesn't bother them at all, can we come back with a modified B?
Again, I mean, up to the Board of Ed, and I would encourage, like I said, they got to work with the people whom are impacted. I mean, there needs to be representation from the library as part of this discussion, not on the periphery, but someone on their board actually take part in the discussions, as well as I think,
We don't have a problem with that. I mean, I think one of the problems has been is that the architects hired have done a fine job in what they've been given but they don't really know that they're just giving us a specific plan, and you're being forced to vote on a specific plan
I mean,
versus a location.
We did articulate on a couple of occasions, though, that we wanted to see D fully vetted and explored, and I think that's what both members of the board and myself have said.
D has been vetted and fully explored, and that's the point. The point is that it doesn't work in today's environment unless you were,
That's your opinion, sir.
Yes. Yeah.
We want to get our opinion in there too. If you're gonna
Yeah,
be
so so that's going to go back to the board. I think that they are fully capable of listening to public reply, and I know I spoke to Ms. O'Neill last night about this, and again, there are plenty of people